Can you do the needful? Can you switch off the mic for now? There you go. Good.
Recording in.
All right. Good afternoon, people. Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. Awesome. Okay. So welcome everyone to the second session of Iced Coffee with us. The series is based on lesser explored areas of life, lesser explored topics, and us linking it back to ICE, innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. So let's get into the session. My guest for today's session is Dr. Asid Mia, who is the chairman of emergency department here at AKU and director of CCIT. Welcome to the session.
Oh, hi. Yeah, thank you. I was just looking there. Do I look at you or I look there?
You can look wherever you want.
Okay.
You can also look
I can
at
also
the
look outside.
beautiful scenery outside.
That's right. I'm doing well. Thank you.
You're on call today, or you were
I
on call?
was, yes. Yes. That's why I haven't changed out of my scrubs and proof evidence that I was on call. My step is with me.
All right. Okay. So starting the session, we'd like you to tell us why the need for an iced coffee series. What made you decide to talk about the lesser explored areas of life?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I have still been thinking about it. One caveat would be that I would like to think that I share an idea with the team, and then the team deliberates, and then there's a consensus, so that it's not like my decision ke ye karna hai and wo ho jata hai. But so I don't know whether I ran it by the rest of the team. I don't remember, but I think it seemed like people were really interested. The need for this, I think, was because when for the past year and a half, we've been doing these webinars, which are centered around MedJack, a book, and chapters from the book. They become
Conversation
topics
starters.
or conversation starters for each of those webinar sessions. Over time, I kind of was probably realizing as well that maybe there are things that do not get captured
right
through the content of the book. And so maybe we could talk about those unexplored areas or lesser explored areas or topics or ideas. And I think what really kind of clinched the deal or cinched the deal, I forget what word it is, was my trip to Turkey. And that was our first session a few weeks back, 2-3 weeks back. And it was while I was traveling and thinking about different things and trying to tie them back to ICE. ICE is innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship. And again, I realized that I couldn't really categorize them into any of a pre-existing content from the book particularly. And so could we get into a different session or different series that could start delving into these
the
lesser
creatives,
exposed
yes,
ideas, lesser
right,
explored ideas, yes.
right, and exploring
More creative link, yes, actually that's a good, a bit more creative perhaps, not very cut and dry innovation, entrepreneurship, health tech kind of scenarios, but the softer side perhaps, which
Right.
becomes really important as well.
Right. All right. So I'm going to pause here for just a second. Welcome, everyone. We have an audience here. So this is meant to be an interactive session. And if you have comments, suggestions, or questions, we will be addressing them, right? So, so just recapping your Turkey trip, right? You did mention about journeying through Shams's rule number 35. And I can tell you about that rule if you
please
don't
do.
remember it. It means all the opposites in the universe are present within each and every one of them. So just touching up on
Dr.
that.
Asif, can I say something?
Yes, please do.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm listening you from Turkey at the
Oh.
moment.
So that's excellent. Thank you so much, Sohail, for being there. Did I say
Yes, the topic sound me so interesting that I took a break from my operating room.
Oh wow.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so the pressure is on to deliver something worth your
Yes,
while.
trying to release the pressure. Let's see how you do it.
Thank you. So there's a lot of pressure, more pressure now. So Sohail, it's interesting because about over a month back, I think it's been about a month and a half, I was in Turkey.
So where you went your time in Turkey?
That was our first episode. So
We'll release a video for that session because it's going to take up a lot of time and we really want you to benefit from today's session.
This is going to be a separate, but I was in Konya. I spent time in Konya and Istanbul and Gaziantep.
Anyway. Okay. I am in Eskişehir, Osman Gazi University.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
We're doing my fellowship.
Right. Good luck. Have a
Thank
great
you.
time.
Thank you.
Have a great time there.
Thank you.
So.
All right. So would you like to just touch
opposite?
on? Yes.
Yes. Okay. So Shams's 40 Rules of Love delves into several very interesting things and ideas and concepts, I think. And one of those is that one of the rules that you've mentioned, which is about opposites and how opposites, the universe is composed of opposites. The individual is composed of opposites. We're, I think, a conflicted mass of opposites. In the same moment, we love and hate. In the same moment, we get it and we don't get it. In the same moment, we're there and yet not there, completely not there. So I think it's really important for us to be okay with that we are going to be conflicted and it's okay to be conflicted. And so opposites from that perspective make us whole. And that conflict, presumably that's a conflict, but I think it's doing something so that it's building us, it's completing us somehow. And today's session actually is linked to opposites.
It is.
Yeah.
So we're going to get started about today's session, which will be about different philosophies, Tao Te Ching's philosophy, a bit about Stoicism, if time allows us to. And I really wanted to share this quote by Bruce Lee with you people, because Bruce Lee followed a lot of Tao Te Ching's teachings. So Bruce Lee said, and I quote, "When I look around, I always learn something, and that is always to be yourself. And express yourself."
फ्लोटर नहीं आता क्योंकि फ्लोटर भी ना हमारे कहलाते कॉर्पोरेट का हिस्सा
Could you mute that?
तो कभी भी वो कहला आता है लिखा फैमिली मेडिसिन कॉर्पोरेट हिस्सा
Kamreen, can you please mute yourself? The online folks, please mute yourself.
Thank you.
There we go.
All right.
Sorry.
So no worries. So Bruce Lee says, always be yourself and express yourself, and to have faith in yourself, and do not go out and look for a successful personality and duplicate him or her. They always copy mannerisms. They never start from the root of being. That is how, and how can and that is how can I be me? So our purpose would be to help you people. We'll try our best to find the potential and how can one express themselves truly and honestly. And we really hope the session helps. And eventually be one with Tao, to be formless like water and be pliable. So, and another quote from Dao De Ching that I really liked was, that which offers no resistance overcomes the hardest substances. That which offers no resistance can enter where there is no space. Few in the world can understand the teaching without words or understand the value of non-action. So, setting the stage for today's session. Now let's delve into Lao Tzu, the author of the book. I'd like you to shed some light on the core of this philosophy, if you must.
Well, disclaimer statement, I am not a Taoist. I have not delved into Taoism to the extent that I would consider myself to be practicing those that particular philosophy. I'm interested. I'm just interested in what it has to offer, and I'm interested in other things as well. So different philosophies or different ways of life, if I may. And so Tao Te Ching happens to be one of those. So without kind of claiming to really understand it to that extent, I can just tell you a bit, perhaps more superficially, that Lao Tzu, that the individual that you mentioned, the Tao Te Ching, is attributed to Lao Tzu being the author. Assuming that there was such an individual, then he probably was there around like 5th or 6th BC.
Right.
And interestingly, it was around the time of Confucius. So Confucianism and Tao Te Ching, or Taoism, if I may, were around the same time, which is also interesting. And so Tao Te Ching, literally translated, is the way of virtue. And if you're interested, there's a plethora of great information, of great write-ups about Taoism, simplified versions of how you can kind of how you can understand it, how you can delve into it, and so on and so forth. And there's some fabulous, fascinating videos on YouTube as well. And if anybody's interested, just reach out, and I can certainly share some of the content that I've felt has been particularly useful for me to understand. So Lao Tzu, I mentioned. Tao Te Ching is the book, and the philosophy or the practice is called Taoism. And at the crux of it, my understanding is that the essence or the crux of it is really that you try to live keeping in mind the nature of things. And what do I mean by nature, and what does the Tao or Taoism refer to through nature? It's really how things are, or how things seem to be. So the nature or characteristics of things in another sense. At times one might think that, oh, is the nature being alluded to, is that Mother Nature? And I'm like, yeah, why not? Could be Mother Nature. The way things are in nature, in the natural world, are the most natural. And so being in alignment with even Mother Nature, I would say, is fine. Then is probably what it is to be aligned with your environment, or to be aligned with nature. What's happening now is really that we're misaligned, completely misaligned, and the environmental destruction and damage that humans are doing to the. And so I think we're seeing what we've sowed.
Right.
So sorry about that.
Out of personal curiosity, why and how did you start delving into all these philosophies? What made you want to start reading up on these philosophies?
Pain of existence. I don't know. Yeah, I just about it. But yes, I think it's suffering, perhaps. Suffering. I say that in not as in a very not like physical suffering, but seems to be this existential angst. I don't think I'm the only one. I think a lot of
Unanswered
us
questions,
go through
maybe.
this existential angst as to, what are we doing? What is my purpose? What am I, why am I doing why do I do what I do? And
Right.
trying to understand those things. And I was not into reading about different philosophies when I was younger. So as a younger individual, I loved reading. Loved reading. I used to read a lot of fiction, and I used to read a lot of fantasy. Fantasy was my go-to place, and horror. So very different from what I have delved into over the past 1 or 2 decades now.
Right.
So I've moved more into nonfiction and then philosophical content like the Tao Te Ching, and then you mentioned Stoicism. Contemporary Stoicism is fascinating. I really find it fascinating. So I've been reading about that, and very much consistent with our own culture and our own setting is Sufism. So
Agreed.
contemporary Sufism has a lot to teach you as well.
Agreed. And so just a note for people tuned in, we by no means are claiming to be experts.
No, of course not. Far from that.
Yeah, we're not
learners.
experts, we're learners. And these are some concepts that piqued our interest, that we found interesting, just because these teachings may be very old, but there's still aspects of it are still applicable
Oh, I
in
see.
our daily lives, personal, professional, however you choose to apply these principles or teachings in your life. And we've learned a great deal by applying these principles to our own version of ICE: innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship. So even when entrepreneurs come to us, or when we wear our entrepreneurial hat, we've learned a lot from these teachings. So I would like you to talk about the concept of Wu Wei now.
Okay. So Wu Wei is one among several concepts that are present or described, talked about in the Tao Te Ching, in Taoism, and I'll tell you why I kind of gravitated towards Wu Wei. Um, if I can tell you the story, I don't know. I'm not exactly sure why exactly these things happen, but Wu Wei, one of the literal translations that, or set of translations that make sense to me is effortless action, or the action of non-action, or even non-action itself. And just by a static definition, I think the beauty of what it is isn't evident. It's when you think about the dynamic of the balance between action and non-action, okay, when you're trying to understand as you go about your own life journey, when to act and when not to act, right? It's that sweet spot which I certainly haven't achieved or reached, and this is it's a life's journey. But Wu Wei is really that interplay, if I may, between action and non-action.
Right.
And but when you do it, it's when you actually practice it, and what I've understood is that it's the beauty of that effortlessness of when you do something even. So it's a few different things when you scratch the surface.
What I really found to be interesting was you need not always act.
Of course.
That instant urge that you must react, you must convey your emotions or whatever you're feeling, or react towards a situation. That practice of sometimes just sitting back and not reacting out of, and it could be out of anger or any negative reaction that you may, that helps you a lot. That feeling, and even the fact that you mentioned, it's that razor sharp focus. So for innovators and for even creative people, you know how they say they're waiting for that lightning bolt or that surge of creativity to hit them. I think Wu Wei is a beautiful concept, because action of non-action, that razor sharp focus, when you can just hit the nail and just hit the dart on that bullseye.
Being in the zone.
Being in the zone.
So that's how it's also described. Being in the
Yes.
zone or the state of flow. Yeah, and things just happen.
Exactly.
And you're not even putting that, well, at least you kind of, when you think about it, you're like, I'm not putting any effort, yet something's happening. So what is that, right? So I think
Right.
that's what Wu Wei is.
Right, that balance. It's actually that balance, and easier said than done.
Oh yeah, of
because
course. Yeah,
I'm still learning.
No, no,
I
so am I.
haven't, yeah, I'm still learning. I haven't, not there yet, but you know, when, yeah.
How do you know you're there? How does anybody know that you're there? And that's a question to anyone, you know.
Self-satisfaction when you receive the self-satisfaction reach that point when you when you feel satisfied by yourself or by your
Yeah.
connection.
So Eamon is saying that when you're satisfied or you have that sense of satisfaction or self-satisfaction, so that could be that feeling that you're there, or so and it could be for people. So I don't know. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's also like, I think it's sort of homeostatic.
Yeah.
You work towards it, and you get to it, and it's all out. So I don't think you stay there.
It's a cyclical,
It's a
iterative
cyclical.
process. You kind of, yeah, actually, that's a great tip. So you keep at it, you keep chipping away, I think, and you try to get closer to something, and then you realize, well, you're very far from anything. And so it's that push and pull factor, which is again that balance, I guess, the yin and yang things.
I agree.
Yeah, go ahead. So we have some more.
So I do think that you get satisfied with that particular goal,
Hmm.
but you're never comfortable
Hmm.
at that point, and you keep wanting to do more with other goals.
Yeah.
So you keep having different goals,
Yeah.
and you're never really satisfied. You might be self-aware at that point that this goal is achieved, and I am relaxed and I'm content, but you're never really satisfied. It's like it's fluid.
It is nice,
It is.
nice description. So you don't accept that sense of complacency as well. So you're constantly, maybe you're constantly searching and seeking and trying. You keep at it. I don't know if that was the. I don't know. I just asked the question.
Absolutely, it makes sense, because I was actually going to ask you to give me an example from your life where you practiced Wu Wei, or where you experienced or tried to.
Yeah, that's good. Or I thought I was practicing, and nobody tells you, right? So it's
Of
not
course.
like you try, but is there somebody watching over your shoulder who's telling you, yes, you're doing this right, or you're not doing this right? It's trial and error, and I think you kind of get better at it over time,
Absolutely.
right? So yeah, I can give you one example from my writing journey, which is also it's a journey, and I'm not talking about biomedical writing, original
Right.
research paper writing,
Right.
not that kind of writing. I'm talking about narrative writing,
Mhm.
short stories that I've been writing for several years, and I felt that when an idea strikes or an encounter strikes, and I've got to write about it, then it's almost as if I'm just the vessel and it's just happening.
It's flowing.
Right? It's just flowing. I don't need to sit there and think and go through 10,000 editions or versions of something. It's just almost as if it just happened, and it's happening, and it happens, and you feel sense of accomplishment, and you're okay with that as well, because it's not like, oh, you pat yourself on the back and you're like, oh, you've achieved something great, but it's a certain sense of achievement or sense of satisfaction. Somebody mentioned
Which
as well.
I was just going to
It's a
tie it
sense of
back to the point Eamon made earlier about that sense of satisfaction or achievement. It may not be like something.
It's not a huge monumental anything, but
Right.
for that particular goal, you mentioned it, for that particular goal, you've reached the end point and you're happy with the product,
Right.
but you haven't agonized about it while you were going through the process. It
Right.
wasn't that you were agonizing about the outcome, and that's Wu Wei. So it's the process that you're actually focused on, being in the zone, or being in this the state of flow is that razor sharp focus. You and the thing you're doing is the only dynamic that matters.
Absolutely.
And it's not necessarily that you're like agonizing or anxious about completing the task. It becomes immaterial. The outcome is immaterial.
Right. Or being too focused on what the outcome may be.
Yes, exactly. You don't have to be
So-
wedded to the outcome. You're probably wedded to the process. Okay, I'm just going to be in the moment. So mindfulness is another very interesting thing that happens.
Right.
So very
And
mindful of the moment.
absolutely enjoying the journey,
Mm-hmm.
enjoying the journey, enjoying the process. I feel sometimes, we as individuals get so consumed by what the outcome is
Yeah.
going to be because we have a set expectation, and it may be internal or external. We're so consumed by it that we sort of tend to forget the journey,
Yeah.
and we forget to enjoy the journey
Mm-hmm.
and the learnings that come from that journey. Which reminds me of another thing that you actually taught us about, Amor Fati.
Oh, Amor Fati. Amor Fati is that's from Stoicism. So we're just gonna flip flop
Jump.
between
Yes.
Taoism and Stoicism. So Amor Fati is one of the teachings from Stoicism. And Stoicism, for those of you who are not familiar, that's another very ancient philosophy of way of life, originated back in the time of the Greeks, actually. So it's Greco-Roman in origin, and it's kind of morphed over time, and it was picked up by, and I guess it got influenced by Christianity as well. And then contemporary Stoicism is probably not the same thing that existed in ancient Greco-Roman times, but
yeah.
Amor Fati, because that's a specific question, is very similar to what we've spoken about through
Absolutely.
Taoism, that you are not focusing on the outcome. The outcome, good or bad or neutral, doesn't really matter. It's irrespective of that. You're focusing on the process.
Right.
And so you're wedded to the process, and that's about it. And no matter what the outcome is, you'll be fine with it. Even if it's a quote unquote negative, bad outcome, you will be okay with that. And it's resilience as well.
Yes.
So,
and that's a journey on its own, because like
Yeah.
I said, easier said than done. Embracing the outcome, no matter what it may be, that's another journey.
all of these, I
And-
think all of these, even Amor Fati, or you talked about, we talk about being in the zone. All of these are not easy to
They're
practice,
not.
and these are probably lifelong journeys, and you keep iterating.
That's true. And you need constant reminders,
Mhm.
because you may like a philosophy,
Mhm.
on the surface and on the face of it, and you say, oh, it resonates with me. But then we get so involved in our day-to-day tasks
you
and
forget.
chores, and we forget. So another thing I felt was, you need constant reminders
Mhm.
that, yes, okay, embrace outcomes no matter what it may be, complete your tasks, and applies to both, I think, personal, professional life, both. So
Just one thing I'd like to add, because I think
Yes.
it becomes kind of relevant and linked to ICE, innovation, creativity, entrepreneurship, right? So
Mhm.
this focus or lack or decreasing that connection to just the outcome, I think that's important from an innovator's perspective and
Oh,
from an
absolutely.
entrepreneur's perspective as well.
Absolutely.
Because then you're too stuck to outcomes.
Absolutely.
And you need to actually implement and learn from the process, even if it's a mistake, quote unquote. It's a failure. You learn much more from failure anyways than you could have potentially from a successful outcome.
I agree.
So and it's an iterative cycle. Right?
I agree, and
So-
that's one thing that we're constantly reminded of, and we constantly remind entrepreneurs too, that
Hmm.
don't be too wedded to the solution.
Hmm.
It's okay to fail,
Hmm.
embrace failure, and then pivot
Yeah.
or iterate.
Yeah.
And it's okay, fail and fail fast.
So maybe the Greco-Romans were innovators and entrepreneurs. Who knows?
Who knows?
So they were, and then that's why.
We're still quoting them.
And we're quoting them, which is going back to what they had taught a long time back.
Constant reminders,
Yeah.
I guess.
You said that embrace your failure, but what about the satisfaction level? If we fail, the satisfaction thing, and we are again on the same point.
Well, okay, so I guess what is being alluded to when somebody says embrace failure, at least the way I read into this is that learn from your failure and you repeat, or you iterate, so that you're kind of like going back to the drawing board, but your next attempt is going to be taking that failure, quote unquote, into mind. Right now the thing is that even like if you connect this to I don't know, failing an exam, for example, right? So when I'm talking about innovation and entrepreneurship, so the examples that come to my mind is really iterative processes of your startup, for example.
Hmm.
Failing an exam, you can also look at that through the same perspective. I've failed exams as well, right? Major exam, and so it's very unnerving. And you're like, oh well, how could I fail the exam? And then you realize that it's like maybe it was really your ego coming in the way as well. That why should you not fail an exam? So that's anyway. So I think we could someday get into a discussion about these things, but embracing failure doesn't necessarily mean that you stop trying, because then that defeats the purpose. If somebody wants to stop trying, it's a free world, you can, but
Yeah.
it's your choice. That's another topic for some other day.
I agree.
Do we really have a choice? Control.
Control.
What is in your control?
Stoicism.
And that's stoicism, right? And Taoism also alludes to nature of things.
Yes.
So what is in your control? And focus on things that you have control over, ignore the rest. And you tend to see better outcomes as well that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I do have a question. And it links to Wu Wei being applied to our workplace. So why should one consider the balance? Why do you think it's important? And especially if, like, for the contemporary workplace.
Yeah.
We're discussing all
Yeah,
these things, but,
right. Well, just going back to what I just said a moment ago, control. Even at your contemporary workplace, if you think about it, how many things are really in your control? Think about, the number of things that are really in your control at your workplace and the number of things that you are anxious about at your workplace or agonize about. It's about, you agonize about pretty much everything. Like somebody would agonize about each and everything, right? Ye ho gaya, wo ho gaya, usne ye keh diya, usne ye kar diya, so on and so forth. And then you like, if you drill deep into that, you realize that a lot of those things, if not each and everything on that particular list, is not in your control.
That's true.
So I think these kinds of philosophy, this echo. So these things kind of remind you. You talked about we need to be reminded. Focus on what's in your control. So thoughts, focus on your thoughts, and which way those thoughts go, then that is also something you can work on. And the actions that come through those thoughts,
right,
those are in your control. Other people's thoughts, other people's actions are probably not in your control. You think they might be in your control, but they're probably not.
Right. So I think that it also addresses the question of anxiety and stress at workplace.
Burnout?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. A lot of times we're anxious because we're anticipating how the other person might react, and maybe not delivering our best because the anxiety of the other person's reaction, which is not under our control. The other person will react regardless. So if you're okay with that feeling, and I'm not saying that should stop someone from putting in their best, always put in your best, but then see there are factors that are beyond your control, and it's okay.
Letting go.
Yes.
I think that's the other thing. You let go of things. You let go of battles, or you choose your battles wisely. Why are these things said about?
That makes a lot of
workplaces
sense.
as well as non-workplaces or your homes as well. And so I think these are very useful for both personal and professional spheres.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we're going to go and discuss one of my favorite philosophies, which is being water-like. But before we do that, we have a slideshow.
Okay.
We always have a slideshow. So we have a slideshow, and I am going to quickly show you a couple of pictures.
Okay.
They're displayed on the screen, the big screen for those present in person. And
I have to turn that.
No, you don't.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So, and we'd really like you to tell us a bit more about each of these pictures. We'll go over them slowly so you can focus.
Okay.
And then we'll get into being water-like. So,
sure.
Hussain, can we start from the beginning?
Oh,
Or-
okay. Being water
Oh,
like
wow.
this
Okay.
was flooding.
Yes, I was just
Okay,
wondering, do we really
that
need to?
the slideshow speed is really
That's okay. We'll
okay,
just
that's right.
pause. Yeah.
All right. So
Okay.
so the left, the one on the left with the motion, the MP3 is
Yes, this one.
this was oh, so Sohail is in Turkey. So this was in Istanbul. I was running alongside the Bosphorus, and so I stopped at that place and I sat there and I was meditating, my version of meditation. So I just took that brief video over there, and that other photograph with my glasses over there, which got stolen, that was at the Bosphorus as well. So
Sorry
I
about
don't
that.
know. These photographs or videos are really just um, objectively, overtly about water, but they remind me that that's what water is like. So being water-like,
Being
I guess,
water-like,
being
that
water-like,
connection.
yeah, exactly. Explicitly being water-like. There's water there right there. And what else? Oh, this is Karachi. So there's Sandspit, just photographs of the beach. Um, I gravitate towards the beach, right? So I'm an Aquarius, so maybe
Yes, I
that's
know
another
that.
thing. I don't know. I don't really
Water
believe in
sign.
water sign. Yeah. So and what other photos
Oh,
do
it's
we have?
coming.
Flooding 2020. So it's not flooding from this year. Again, my house had water coming in. This was just so a reminder that
Yes.
being water-like, right? So Wu Wei analogically if you want to think about what has that property or what has the properties of balancing action with non-action, then think about water. And that's what the Tao Te Ching also actually delves a lot into as an analogy for Wu Wei. And so water can be life sustaining, is a
Agreed.
life sustaining force, and water is one of the biggest destroyers as well. And this was from that flooding episode 2 years back when my house got flooded. And it reminds me that water can be destructive. It's not always positive. It's not always a positive life force. It can be very, very destructive.
Right.
It doesn't, you can try to have roadblocks in front of water, have barriers, but it can flow around or through barriers as well. So interesting.
True.
Just
Okay,
reminders,
we have a question, and
Yeah.
someone saying, don't you think Wu Wei is similar to meditation?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how, what form of meditation the individual delves into. For me, sitting at the beach or the Bosphorus, while I sat on those rocks, I was breathing deeply, and so I've kind of like learned that process through a lot of trial and error as well. So that's my meditative space, and doing that at the beach or where there's a water body, yes, just with the sound, or out in the rain, So yeah, why not? So Wu Wei, that effortless action, if you want to relate it to meditation, yeah,
You could.
you could.
You could
Yeah,
use.
it could be a way of meditating for sure.
True. Right. Okay. So, Hussain, I really request you. I really would like you to talk more about your life ring, which we just saw. If you
Okay.
could fast forward it. Yeah. Next, please. Yes.
Okay.
This.
So yeah, this was a lot of fun.
And it has both
Oh,
pictures.
yeah, that
it
one,
has.
yeah. So the life ring, the thing that you're seeing on the left, my left, with the very colorful doodle. This was part of a course that I had taken on Coursera, which is called Creativity, Innovation, Transformation. And this was one of the exercises in which you had to describe your life ring through a visual, or you could prototype something. So it was a very interesting exercise, and I did this doodle. And this is interesting. This is retrospective because the life ring was doodled a few years back. Forget, I think it says 2020, right? So, but when I was delving more into Wu Wei, that was later on, and thinking about it, that what you're seeing in the center is, which it says inner realm, and so the Oriental symbols on the left, the two Oriental symbols, that is Wu Wei.
Wu Wei. Yeah.
Yeah. So probably Mandarin. symbols, I think, but that's Wu Wei, and the circle next to it is Yin
Yin
Yang.
yang.
And the letter after that, or the word after that, is Ishq, and then there's a teddy bear. So this is what my inner realm is, and it's interesting over time, well, I won't delve into details because I think I'll go off on a tangent,
Mhm.
but the inner realm has Wu Wei in it. And
Right.
what this is helping me realize, or reminds me as well, that Wu Wei is powering these external things, which you can see some of those. What's the venture I'm working on? Innovator, entrepreneur. I don't know if you can read it, but one thing is about family, working on my relationships. Another thing is on myself, and the fourth thing is about my day job. And so my inner realm is really powering all of these things, which is
Right.
my outer, worldly things.
Right.
But it's really that inner thing that's kind of like,
And Wu
and
Wei
Wu
is a
Wei is
part
there.
of it.
It's
So
part
there's
of
Wu
that.
Wei, there's Yin and
There's Yin and
Yang, which
Yang,
talks about balance.
balancing. Yep.
Even Wu Wei, to some extent, is
It's
about
balance of
balance.
action and non-action,
Yes.
right? So it's
So
balance.
it's all about reaching that sweet spot,
Yep.
that balance.
Yep.
So moving on, and we spoke about being water-like, and so how do you link Wu Wei to being water-like, if you have on it, and also linking it to Taoism? What's your take on it?
So water,
Mhm.
through its qualities,
Mhm.
I think kind of opens itself up to that thought process for me, about that balance,
Right.
right? So if I need to have balance in my life, then I can just look upon water as that analogy, and or that proxy to Wu Wei, if I may. And it's really interesting, right? So water, amongst its several properties, physical properties, even its chemical properties, it's exceedingly intriguing. Um, just thinking about its physical properties, so it's shapeless, it's amorphous. It's shapeless, it's formless, yet it can take any form or any shape that, put it in a container, and the container's shape is what the
Agreed.
water's shape is going to be, right? So that reminds me about being shapeless or formless in certain ways, not to be fixated on any kind of, I don't know, outside kind of like,
Pliable.
yes, be pliable. Exactly. That's a good way of putting it. Being pliable. Resistance is another quality, right? So water does not resist, yet it will not be resisted. So it's fascinating, right? So
Paradoxical.
it's very paradoxical, and it's very Wu Wei like. Water itself
Yes.
is Wu Wei, right? So and yeah, opposite. So yeah.
Just like to touch that water could also be destructive.
Yes.
Not balanced apparently.
Yeah.
Right? So if
It's schizophrenic.
yes. So if it's
Just diagnose
excessively
water.
there, like it was destructive to us in the monsoon
Yes.
flooding that we had 2 years ago. So since it wasn't in a balanced state or in a balanced quantity, that is why it was destructive. So creating that balance of weight will also help us be like water. Like not excessively there, but also in a
Very
balanced.
nice. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yes.
What percentage of humans are water?
Yeah.
Is it like
It's-
90 plus?
Yes. 3/4. Well,
70%.
I think it's a
70,
three quarters.
yeah.
I think why do I remember 3/4? I think three
It is
quarters of,
3/4.
of the human
So
body.
maybe that's why we are more water like
Yeah.
anything else.
Being more, what is like the property to being more. is
More
like
pliable.
If you have, you said about the relationship. If you have any sort of spouse or anything else, so be yourself mold into that container.
Yeah.
Bigger square
Yeah.
or a circle.
Yeah, exactly, right? So shapeshifter is another, like you're just a shapeshifter. You can take off and take on any shape you want. Resilience, yes.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like sometimes when you're by the beach and when the wind is up and the waves are like sharper and like they hit you a bit more, it's just I feel like water also responds to the environment in that way. Like it doesn't. So I feel like part of it is when something difficult is happening and allowing like the anger or the sadness or like whatever is coming up, not resisting that.
Yeah.
Allowing it to move through you and whatever it's doing.
It's like containing
or
those things as well?
letting them flow,
Or letting
Letting them flow,
Yeah.
like not resisting them, not holding
Yeah,
them
that's
back.
right. Yeah, yeah.
experiencing, yes, exactly, experiencing all the emotions, whatever they may be, negative, positive. We were even discussing the other day, how like toxic positivity is
Yeah,
another thing.
yeah.
Everyone just says be positive and don't think about negative emotions or negative things. That's also adding up to all that negative emotions or trauma being built up. So experience everything. I know easier said than done, and this, I've been a broken record for saying it. But yes, you have to sometimes, I think, experience the sadness or negative emotions too. I guess that's also part of life.
Yeah.
And you know how you said, so we spoke about water being formless. I am again going to quote Bruce Lee because I thought this was very fascinating. He said the art of dying, it's what being water-like is like the art of dying. It's like the idea of being non-fixed. The art of being a different person tomorrow than we are today by letting go of our past.
Yeah.
Our past attachments, our past experiences, emotions, that openness, basically being open to trying different things or different experiences. So even that's a quality of water, or being water-like. And then how water is soft, and softness could be linked to humility.
Mhm.
And water is also equally hard.
Mhm.
It can, form its own path,
Yeah.
cut out tracks and paths when it runs through rocks.
Water has the ability to transform itself.
Yes.
So different states.
That is true.
Liquid,
Based on the environment,
solid, gas.
water
Yeah,
changes.
exactly. So so it's got that transformative,
Adaptability.
adaptive, yeah, quality, adaptive.
So we can learn a lot from water.
I think so. Shall we take down the slides and then
Yes.
we can take a look at. So.
Do we have any questions? I
Yeah,
think we
how are we
have
doing
any
on time?
questions. Oh,
Yeah, we got it.
we're good. I think we have questions. Okay, so they're just saying, just repeat whatever the audience is saying. But then you can actually take down the slideshow. All right, so moving on. I would actually like you to read, if you have something, which is a mantra of yours, which will remind us of being water-like.
Yeah, well, yeah, I can try. I don't know whether it'll remind you or not. At times I forget it myself, so I need. So in case somebody is interested, I wrote this article. It's an essay that appeared in the Express Tribune. I think it was like 2 months back. And the title of the article is "The Power of Wu Wei." And there's some references. I don't know if the references are embedded in the article, but this book of ours, chapter 10 of Medjack, also delves into Wu Wei, and there are references in there as well. So, yeah, so there's something that I'd written, and I'll just read it out to you. The above concept may be difficult to grasp conceptually, but being like water is a proxy to Wu Wei is worth considering. The mantra that I use, and more often than not, it does work, is as follows. I need to be like water, a positive life force as well as positive flow. Water does not resist, and it will not be resisted by hurdles. It will simply flow around or through roadblocks, but then water can be destructive too. Therefore, too much positivity is also not good, as that can sap and zap me as well as those around me. So simple, brief, but other people have actually added a lot more very interesting ideas and thoughts.
Right, so we have questions.
Yeah.
There's a comment that says, but adopting shapeless property like water, aren't we going to lose our own God-gifted shape as humans? And when I say quality, it means everything that we've been gifted with.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm okay with it. I don't want to be, but personally, and I can answer it from my perspective, where it's like, okay, but I think I don't want to be defined by any one thing. So I like, I actually love the concept of Wu Wei from that perspective, that being water-like then actually opens the potential of the shape that can be
Right.
taken, then that's a limitless possibilities
Right.
as well. So will I lose my identity, individuality? I think this whole life that I get to live is about trying to identify who am I really. And I'm realizing more and more that actually I'm not just that single identity anyways.
Right.
I'm a mass of conflicted thoughts and emotions and actions. And so why should I then adhere to a single identity? I need to embrace my multiple.
Absolutely. And I think it
forms.
also ties into, so water being pliable, it's just one of the qualities
Yeah.
of water, right? So you pick and choose and you decide what quality would you like to have in that
Could be,
certain
yeah.
environment or
Mhm.
circumstance, right? You probably don't want to do anything. You could be like a silent lake, just sitting there, not
Mm.
doing anything, or you could be like a flowing river,
Mhm.
having currents, undercurrents, or you could be like ice or a stream. So you pick and choose, basically.
That's a good point. Yeah,
It's-
that's an interesting way of looking at it.
yeah. We also have another question. So Azra Naseem is saying it's a thought-provoking talk. Two questions. How do we maintain our water-like, formless nature in a culture that expects us to be unchanging?
I don't know. Say you just do it. I don't know. I think that's I think it was yesterday or day before when we had like I think it was something that was brought up in one of the team meetings as well, that there's pressure to conform, right? So what is, I think, Taoism and then Wu Wei and so on, I think what this is kind of pointing towards is non-conformity as well. When the pressure, societal, cultural pressure is really for conformism, I think realizing that that's what's happening, that yes, there is that pressure to conform, and you are then aware of that, then you make sure that you do the opposite. Please, that's what I want. Easier said than done. Disclaimer. Well, yeah, but disruption क्या होती है, right?
True.
हम लोग भी जब innovation or innovation space के अंदर, when we talk about it, okay, status quo is status quo.
Right.
You've got to disrupt it, right? Otherwise, things will not be different.
Absolutely.
And then doing the same things again and again and expecting different results is stupidity.
It is stupidity.
Per Einstein, not per me, but per Einstein. So if you want to, be different or non-conformist, then be a non-conformist.
Right. Now, there's a follow-up question to that. So she says, investors seek for consistency and dependability in a founder. How does being water-like, help in that?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. And yeah, I don't know. How do you then? So yeah, and thanks for that question. I think it also gets me to think about, okay, who are you at your core? What's your authenticity, right? So how authentic are you? And if the world is not ready for your authentic self, but you understand who your authentic self is, then you can be a bit of a shapeshifter, right? And it's okay. So, and you actually made me realize when you just mentioned, you told me, Avi, not too long ago, that depending on the quality that you need at that moment.
Absolutely.
So if in front of an investor or a VC, and you're pitching an idea or a startup, and you're doing your entrepreneurial pitch, you don't want to come across as being an exceedingly diverse, fluid kind of person who's all over the place. Right. So I think that's also being mindful of what that particular moment requires. That's what I would do. That's what my suggestion to myself would be, even that, don't be fluid, be focused on what is required for that particular pitch.
So it really depends.
It depends, right? So isn't that being fluid?
Exactly.
It's being fluid, actually.
It is being fluid, and again, linking it to like various qualities of water. You pick and choose. You decide you decide whether it's time for disruption
Yeah.
and you really want to be that strong current,
Mhm.
or you decide that, now is not the time, maybe effortless action or non-action
That's right.
is the way to go. So, but what's not changing here is that water is water.
Mm.
So you are getting that consistency. So when we link it back to you being an entrepreneur and pitching your product, if you are true to solving that problem that exists,
Mm.
and you believe
Yeah.
in your solution,
Mhm.
and you're okay with pivoting and
Mm.
iterating, it's okay.
Yeah.
The investors will see and will believe and
Right.
will,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it all makes sense, or it's
Mm.
all connected.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
We have another question. Okay, so Nida's saying, I can't help but remember a saying about water, how the same water that softens a potato boils an egg.
Hmm.
It's intriguing, the conundrum of how water/situations can shape you into a different person. Maybe we can choose how we end up if we are mindful of its nature. More like a comment, suggestion,
Yeah. Yeah.
food for thought.
Yes, certainly.
Right.
I
All
guess
right.
and just from another, you get from the moment what is needed,
Hmm.
right? So I think that's also part of like putting in design
Hmm.
into it. So it's not all random from that perspective.
Yes.
You actually design it in such a way that you kind of end up perhaps even molding outcomes in a certain way as well. It don't just become
Sure. So
stochastic. I don't know if I'm making sense, but anyways.
yes. So sometimes you have situations and it's by design.
Yeah.
You choose to react the way you do,
Yeah, yeah.
or and there's nothing wrong with
Mm.
it. That's also a quality of water. So
There's a comment.
oh, we have
Question,
a comment or a
sorry.
question?
Not a question. Actually, what I understood from the last point was I just noted that being like water, you could just, decide the days of formation, decide which form do I want to take in that particular day. For example, today,
Hmm.
maybe being normative, I need to become an athlete. Today, this other day when I need to be disruptive, I need to be like current. So I think that could be the last comment that we read, could be the directive to that, some days we need to decide that which form of
Yeah.
water do we want.
Absolutely.
So just for the audience online, I think
Yeah.
you may want to repeat that.
Yeah. So sorry, what's your name?
Sorry.
Sahar. Okay, so Sahar just made a point and she said, depending on the situation,
Hmm.
you might want to decide what state you'd like to be in, or what shape you'd like to take, or if you'd like to be like an ice cube, or if the situation demands disruption, you'd like to be like the river having a current. So it really depends on the situation and how you want to go about addressing it. There's also something that I read, which was a part of the session we took, your session, and that also ties into being water-like. So, when you say being water-like or being in the zone, you let go of past failings
Hmm.
and imperfection. Thing that I'm struggling with and I'm learning that, letting go of your imperfections, and then you keep on iterating, and it's just when the task at hand.
Hmm.
So it's just when the task at hand and finish your task and not be too consumed or concerned about the results.
Hmm.
So I thought that was really interesting, and I wanted to share it with the audience. So moving on, I said, given today's toxic and cutthroat and competitive environment at workplaces or even at home, how do you think being water-like can help one or can benefit you?
Yeah, so I think we've kind of like gone over bits and pieces
Yes.
to this answer already,
Yes.
right? So ideas, thoughts that people have actually shared, qualities of water, right?
Mhm.
So softness, you mentioned,
Mhm.
somebody else mentioned pliability,
Mhm.
resilience. I think humility is another thing. Just kind of holding back that balance between when do you want to act, when do you want to not act.
Hmm.
And so I think those things are very important and probably very beneficial in a very competitive, highly competitive, non-collaborative, toxic, quote unquote, environment as well. And does that mean that you're going to be a pacifist? No, not at all. I don't think it's the same thing at all. It doesn't mean that you're going to like run in the opposite direction with your tail between your legs. That's not what it is. You choosing when to disengage, when not to actually be dragged into, or even actively get into a fight or a battle or whatever, and to walk away from something. Right.
That's
So
okay too.
that's okay. That's okay. And I think we've got to be okay with that as well. And like I mentioned earlier in this chat, that most of the things are not in your control. It's just a perception. It's just some narrative. It's some narrative that we tell ourselves, and we're so fixated. I think it's perhaps a very Western kind of a thought process. And sorry, but it's almost capitalistic at certain times for me, that you feel that everything is, you've got to act. You've got to keep implementing, acting, and then things are going to change, and things are going to become better, and then you can keep building up on that. It doesn't happen like that. And the Tao is suggesting
I was actually
otherwise.
going to ask you that, isn't it contradictory to what the Western culture actually teaches you, to be ambitious and to keep on trying harder and harder? And
well, look where it's getting us. Not just like that, but where does it get us? It gets us into more anxiety, more depression, burnout, because you're constantly kind of running after something or another, right? So that rat race aspect, I think, needs to be called out as well. Okay, so doesn't mean that you stop performing better or improving yourself or doing good things. That's not what it means. Doesn't mean you're going to become lazy, or you should become lazy. Not at all. It's just you got to practice. I guess you've got to just try these things yourself, and then you realize how beneficial they are.
True. So
nothing ventured, nothing gained.
True. We're almost will be. Oh wait. We might just have one more question. Okay, it's just a comment. Salim saying water-like clarity or dissolvability.
No, more dissolvability. Yes, good point. It's a universal solvent.
Yes.
Just
be mindful of that. Yes, it is. It is. Okay, we have a question. Murad Khan asking, what is the relationship between being water-like and developing an internal moral compass? Something that is more important than anything else, is it?
Dr. Murad, but I dare say Dr. Murad, maybe he could answer that question for me. The bioethicist par excellence. I'm probably going to say the wrong thing. I don't know, but how does being water-like jive with your inner compass? I think it does. I mean, for me, it does, because being mindful of the moment and being mindful of what the interaction is, walking away from something when there's a need for walking away, or letting go. I think that's very much linked to my inner compass, or my inner my moral compass. Right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, if it works for me from that perspective, then I think that's an alignment.
If you're okay with it.
If I'm okay with it.
As long as you're okay with it.
But it's a good point. It's a great question.
Right.
To keep that in mind. And what is your whatever these things that we're talking about, if we do something or not do something, or the balance of it, but from an ethics perspective or a morality perspective, then
so I'll tell you what, so different qualities of water that we discussed doesn't always mean you have to pick the one about being rebellious. And when I say being rebellious, you don't necessarily always have to be a storm that will uproot trees or that will damage property or would harm people. You decide to which degree would you want to take it ahead. So I think that should align with your internal moral compass. Up to you. All right, that brings us to the top of the hour. What would be your take-home message for people who are attending?
I don't know. I mean, my take-home message would be if this thing intrigues you, or if it's just kind of like, getting you to think, do read about it and practicing it through. So we're talking about Wu Wei, right? So effortless action or the action of non-action. So practicing it through keeping water as your as an analogy or as an it's allegorical. Perhaps it's just a metaphor, right? So we're really using water as a metaphor, but I think it's a beautiful metaphor. So unless you try, and I think mentioned this earlier as well. So unless you try it and you figure out whether it's working for you or not, and then iterate upon it, you wouldn't know. So that would be my message.
That's a great message. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much,
being a part
everyone.
of our talk.
This is very experimental, by the way. I know this is the second session, but do let us know if these kinds of sessions are of interest and what kind of topics you'd like to hear about. And you could be speakers as well. So it's not only just the two of us over here. No, Marine's going to stay moderating. I'm going to let somebody else come.
Thank you for tuning in.
All right.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Have a good day or night.
Or night. Oh. You can just leave.
Oh, leave?
Yeah.